Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on taking a strategic approach to moving the needle on enrollment, brought to you by the National Council for Marketing and Public Relations. From our national office in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I'm Debbie Halsey. I have the pleasure of serving as Executive Director. With me today behind the scenes is Ben Munson, NCMPR's Marketing and Member Outreach Manager, who's joining us from St. Louis, Missouri. We have a large number of individuals joining us, upwards of 500 people registered for this webinar. First of all, we continue to hope that everyone is well and adjusting to this new normal in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. We also wish you and your teams the best as you continue to manage issues involving the coronavirus outbreak and the need to constantly change your messaging and your support to students, staff, faculty, and other constituents. We hope that today's webinar, which is the second of 4 free webinars being offered in response to the crisis, will help you as you look ahead to the coming months. Because of the sheer volume of attendees, we may not be able to get to all of the questions. In anticipation of that, we have created a new NCMPR Facebook group where you can post follow-up questions for the presenters to answer, and you can also post follow-up comments to share with colleagues. You can join the group by searching within Facebook for Community College Collaborators, and there's a direct link to it as well. Finally, we want to say thanks, a huge thanks to 3 sponsors who have helped to make this series of webinars possible: Interact Communications, Claris Corporation, and 25th Hour Communications. We appreciate their generous support and assistance in bringing you this programming. And now to today's presentation. Our presenters are 3 key members of the marketing team at Interact Communications. Pamela Cox Otto, she's a popular presenter. Many of you know her at NCMPR regional and national conferences. She has more than 30 years of experience working with community colleges. She's a nationally recognized speaker, academic presenter, and author, and her focus is on the specific challenges facing 2-year community and technical colleges. Under her leadership, Interact has become a leader in community college research, recruiting and retention campaigns, college onboarding, bond initiative, guided pathways communications, media relations, and statewide image and advocacy campaigns. We also have Cheryl Broom with us. She's a former television news reporter. She made her move into public relations and marketing when she became the first PIO for a California sheriff's office. After earning a master's degree in communication studies from Chico, Cheryl served as the Director of Public and Government Relations, Marketing, and Communications at Miracosta College. That was for 11 years. She's a former member of NCMPR and served as District 6 Director. And finally, we have Mary DeLuca. She recently joined Interact, and she has 30 years of community college experience. She developed a nationally respected communications department and successful college brand from the ground up during her leadership at the Community College of Baltimore County in Maryland. Pam, Cheryl, and Mary, we are so happy to have you with us. We thank you for making today's presentation, and to Interact, we thank you for co-sponsoring this series of webinars.
Thanks so much, Deborah. I appreciate it, and we're awfully glad to be here with you. By the way, I, like most of you, have dogs at home because I am at home, and most of you are. So if something starts making strange sounds in the background, it's either my husband or my dog. Just be prepared for that. Welcome to Taking a Strategic Approach to Moving the Needle on Enrollment. And you're probably not alone if at some point in the last few weeks, your president has walked into your room and said, we're really going to have to crank on things for the future because, boy, this has really messed up our spring enrollment. Well, because of that, we wanted to bring to you something that's not simply here's a quick campaign or here's a fix, but rather kind of a big picture plan with things that you can do so that you're drafting off of all of your efforts. God is not giving you more time, so everything you need to do needs to be at least a 2-fer or a 3-fer. So with that, let's get started. You know, I've implied this, but piecemeal tactics can leave you feeling like it's all coming apart. I've had a few people already reach out and say that people are saying, oh, quick, do a plan on this, quick, do a plan on that. If you start doing millions of tiny little plans, you will not move the needle and you will be distracted. So the important thing here is to not allow yourself to be picked apart. You need to look at the big picture, because ultimately, what you were hoping is that you will not leave your audiences feeling like this. You want them to understand what you're doing, what you're trying to do. I got to tell you, I believe this is actually a pretty darn good time for community colleges. And the reason is we are located in the heart of the communities we serve. And because of that, we're able to do some things that other people are not able to do. And this is our chance to shine. So first, we're in a crisis, like you didn't know that. Most of you, many of you are working from home, having a difficult time keeping in touch with your other staff, your PR folks, your marketing folks. If you've not had a virtual happy hour yet, I strongly urge you to do so. It's excellent for your morale of your staff. There's going to be a lot of pressure to throw ads at the wall, right? Anything like get SEO going, get recruiting going. We're worried about our enrollment, and we really have to rebound quickly, strongly for fall. And what I want to tell you is, yes, you do need to respond, but you need to take a few minutes and think about it and get it right. Otherwise, two things will happen. You will work yourself to death and you will not move the needle. And those two things need to not happen. Your president's getting desperate. We need a big fall. We need to make up for this. And if I had a buck for every time I've had the president walk in and say, yeah, we really need this to be huge. And my answer is always, well, then perhaps you should stop throwing away 50% of all the students who come here, because it's a little bit easier to fill the coffers again if we actually keep the students we have. Finally, there's going to be a lot of people coming in your door saying, hey, I can help you with your spring. I can help you with your fall. Ooh, I've got a plan for summer. Quick stuff, right? Let me do this. Guys, don't do standalone stuff. Your plan needs to integrate all of it. Otherwise, you're just going to cost yourself time and money. And worse than that, when the thing is solved, you will not get the credit for working your little heart out. What'll happen is they'll say, well, it's a damn good thing I hired those other people. And don't get me wrong, I'm somebody you might hire, but I want to make sure that whatever we are doing for you actually leaves your organization and you stronger at the end. So don't fall for the quick fix. That said, here's some other pieces I want you to think about not doing. Whatever worked before is not going to work now. Affordable, yeah, still matters, but nobody wants to spend. Anybody who's got money in the bank is not looking for a way to have that go out of their pocket, which means, first of all, if your leadership team is not looking at some ways to put off people having to pay for the education or longer term loans or something else, the promise, they are behind the curve. They need to be looking at what you do for people who've been laid off and do not have money to spend, because there's a lot of them who have time but no money. Accessible, yeah, I wouldn't brag about that. Udemy is accessible, and you can buy courses for 11 bucks, which is a little cheaper than most of you are. Don't use that message. Close to home, who cares? Everything is close to home. It's online. Half the time, I sometimes will take a course or two, and suddenly I'll go, oh my God, I'm in Italy, I'm in Europe, I'm in Great Britain. The courses come from everywhere. People don't necessarily know where they come from. So there's the close to home piece for online does you no good unless you truly leverage it. And I'll talk about that later. The big thing is throwing uncoordinated ideas at the wall are going to make you and your college look desperate. And frankly, we've got enough desperate people out there looking sad and pitiful. Do not contribute to that. If you're not careful, you're going to waste resources. You're going to ignore the landscape that's changed in 8 weeks, and you're going to ignore the opportunity that you have now. So I want you to kind of take a deep breath with me. Ready? And we're going to talk about things to do differently. So, things you should think about. Research on what is needed in this new landscape. Nobody knows what the community needs. Whenever you did your last community research, I guarantee you it wasn't during the pandemic. Student research, are they happy? You've got people taking online classes who never wanted online classes. They attended boring face-to-face classes just to avoid having to go online. And now they're all being thrown up into the online world. Climate research. If you've ever had cranky faculty and staff, this is the moment where you can pull them together, because this is a crisis, not of your making, right? So nobody can look at you and go, well, I can't believe you made that mistake, that decision. It's not your fault, which means if you look at getting good research, you can bring people together. What does your community need? What do your students need? Your staff? This may be over by summer, but it may not be over till fall. And the last time we had a huge pandemic, the Spanish flu in the early part of, 1918, somewhere around there, it lasted 18 months. So if it ends early, great, but plan for an 18-month event. Otherwise, you're going to end up looking pretty darn tone deaf with your community. Leadership needs to think about what they are offering. And I can't say this enough. I know you probably are not in a position within your organization to say that to them. So then, I don't know, share this slide. Because whatever they were offering before, the community actually is open to other things being offered now. Trapped people in their homes need something to take care of their time, right? Also, CTE, we were working so hard to get people jobs and use CTE programs. But it's really hard to weld from home. And the first 2 years of an associate degree, that's not necessarily what people are thinking about. So leadership and your academic folks and your non-credit folks need to be thinking about what are things that trapped people can use. And there's a lot of them. Everybody with a cell phone should be able to access your classes. And I know many of you will tell me, it is cell phone accessible, right? Yeah, okay. Make sure it's simple, because I've taught at many, many schools, and half the time it takes me 2 weeks to figure out how to use the academic student service system that they're using. If you're going to bring people on board, ask yourself, could your grandparents use this? And I don't mean cool grandparents. I mean grandparents who still worry about the cell phone giving them brain cancer. Those grandparents. Other things, well, let's be honest. Every high school graduate in the next 2 to 4 years is probably sitting at home and bored. Now, there's a few that probably stayed where they live and they're sheltering in place there, but many of them came home the minute this started to look like it was going to be a shelter in place kind of thing, which means every high school student that you've let slip through your fingers and go to a major university is home, bored, with their parents who are also bored. You have new audiences. For the first time, you have a chance to go after folks that you've lost, right? Because they're there, and yes, they may still take online classes from whatever university they left, but two things to think about. That university does not have the same ability to deliver some high-touch things along with the high tech, like book delivery and special study groups and lunch delivery from the cafeteria and classes that take advantage of your local knowledge. Those are all pieces that you should be putting in front of your leadership team. I know those don't fall under your purview, but if you can get them to start thinking about all of the resources you have, they can be put to work not only for your students, future students, but for the community in general. And that is part of the power of what you have in this moment. Finally, people are either frightened, depressed, or in denial, sometimes all three. How can you be the college they need? So it's not just about enrollment. This is that moment. Remember all those times we sat in meetings and you said, how do we get them to think about us from something other than just a junior college, right? This is the moment when you show how important it is being a community player, and your college can step up into a role and raise your image. Whatever your offerings were, they're not the right mix now. Whatever your message was, it's not the right message now. Whatever your tactics were, same old is wrong. You need a new approach, and you need it fast. And it needs to integrate all of your communications, including faculty. For the most part, many of you have left retention into that loving hands and arms of your faculty. And now your faculty, even the ones who are wonderful in person, are trying to make that work over distance communication, which means one, they're learning, and two, they need help. And that means you need to be involved in that. You need to leverage the fact that you are the community's college. And that's basically what we're here today. So here's what we're going to cover in the webinar. We want you to feel like this. These are happy faces. I'd like to say one of them is me, but you know I'm much shorter than that and a little chubbier too. So here's what we're going to be covering. The research you need right now to understand your audience and how to support them, how to put it together and build the plane as you fly it, and finally, how to create an impact with your creative during this time. If you've done a long-term plan, great, but now let's change it. A little bit about Interact. We've been around a little while, actually, founded in '96. We have offices in Wisconsin, California, and Maryland. We've been 20 plus years in two-year college marketing, worked with coming up on 500 community and technical college clients. And this is what we do. We don't do this for any other organization or type of organization. It's community colleges only from marketing to graduation. And when we talk about our team, it is a team. We're not a group, loose confederation of gig workers. What we are is professionals, and we've dedicated our lives to finding out and meeting the needs of community colleges. But enough about us. Look, I'd like to tell you that the person on the right was me, but it isn't. It's the person on the left. So let me hand it off now to Mary. Oh, look, I like that. Back, forth, back. Let me hand it off to Mary DeLuca. We are so tickled she joined us this year, and have her talk to you about your audience.
Thank you, Pam, and hello, everyone. I'm going to be talking with you about some things you can do to better understand your audience. Before you do anything, you need to put yourself in their shoes. Turn the lens away from your administrative issues and think about what matters most to your audiences. What weighs heavy on the minds of your students and your prospective students? What keeps them up at night? It's likely they have similar concerns as they had before. How will I pay? How can I balance everything? Can I handle this? Will I feel like a fish out of water? But this is now heightened by new fears in terms of losing their job, taking care of kids at home, and figuring out all these new online platforms. So understanding your audience really does matter. You need clarity on who they are, what concerns they have, what motivates them, so that you can be relevant and you can know where and how to connect with them and come across as empathetic. It's really important in these times to show that you care. How else will you understand the tangible and intangible reasons they may come or go, so that you can develop messaging that resonates and moves them in the right direction? The good news is you do have tools available that can help you figure all this out. You just need to do the research, develop personas, and consider where they are in their student journey. And we're going to talk about all three of these. There are 4 types of research you can and should be employing right now: fundamental critical research, social listening, surveys like Interact's Media Preps, and A/B testing. Earlier, Pam referenced fundamental critical research when she was sharing with you some things you should be thinking about right now. Community research, student research, and climate research are all critical so that you can gain a baseline understanding of what your audiences need from you so that you can be relevant. You should be considering conducting a community scan like Pam had mentioned before. Things have changed tremendously in these 8 weeks, and you have an opportunity as people are home and online to do phone and online surveys. You could even test in this scan some programs and class offerings you might be considering that would be different for fall or even summer if you get going quickly. It's also important now to gauge student satisfaction and really to look at those students who failed to leap online when you made that transition. Look at things like your online services and what's not working for them, what is needed so that students can better succeed. What about the students who didn't come back when you transitioned online? Find out why. What do they need? This could go on longer, and you need to know how to bring those students back and to serve others so that they don't leap off. And then don't forget about your internal community. They're so important to you, and everyone's under all this extra pressure. You want to make sure that you maintain community and actually create it even during this time. And the things that you put in place now to help build community are going to help you long after this crisis. So we know you're stretched thin, and thinking about doing all this might seem a little bit overwhelming. So don't forget to reach out to us if we can help with that research lift. Let's talk about social listening. You already have 24/7 access to really know what your audience is thinking and doing. So how do you go about practicing social listening? First, you need to be tracking mentions of your college on your social media platforms, making sure that you're searching your college name, hashtags, and then second, you need to analyze what people are saying so that you can gain a deeper insight into what they're feeling, doing, and questioning. But the real social listening begins when you put what you learn to action. For example, if you see students on Twitter complaining that they haven't received online class information yet, make a post, let them know you're working on it. Find out what's going on behind the scenes. Find a resolution and share that. Listen to what they're saying and respond. This is an advanced and more effective way to improve your communication. Surveying your students can also capture valuable qualitative and quantitative data. Last month, I wrote a blog that many of you might have noticed about the top 10 takeaways from Interact's Media Preferences Survey of nearly 15,000 community college students this fall. Well, there are 5 high-level takeaways from our Media Pref survey data that are especially relevant in guiding planning right now. First of all, your students are hanging out on YouTube, as are your prospective students and their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, everybody nowadays. This is even more significant because of the social distancing and stay-at-home orders. They've also cut the cord on cable. Streaming dominates, and Google data showed that streaming increased by 63% the last week of March alone. So now is the time to add OTT, or what we call over-the-top advertising, where you can show your video ads on popular streaming platforms like Amazon, Apple, Google, and Hulu. And you might not realize it, but students do read and pay attention and hang on to your college email that they received. So this is especially important for retention. And retention is critical right now. So use your email platform to build campaigns for your current students that don't just give them information and provide them instructions on things they need to be doing and deadlines on when they need to be doing them. Use the email campaigns to provide opportunities that will engage and uplift and motivate your students to stay. It's also important to keep in mind that your students are on multiple devices simultaneously. This just means that you're going to have to work harder to get their attention and keep their attention. And that means that the messaging really matters. And we're going to have a little more on that later from Cheryl. And finally, our Media Pref data showed us that they expect to hear back from you today. And that expectation is even more heightened that they have an immediate response from you when they're posting questions and inquiries on social media. And they're not likely to be more patient with you just because your college is operating remotely. So you're going to need to put some resources to monitoring and being responsive on your social media. A/B testing is a great way to see what's working and what's falling flat with your audiences so that you can fine-tune it. Here are a couple of examples of how we used A/B testing on advertising for Oakland Community College. We tested which image drove more activity. In both cases, you can see by the number of impressions and clicks that the symbolic images representing speed and vision worked better than the images of students in this campaign. This kind of testing can be especially helpful now in assessing whether certain images you're using are working or possibly turning people off from your messaging. For example, that ominous COVID-19 illustration that everyone's using, it has been shown to heighten some people's anxiety level. So you might want to reconsider some of your images and experiment with some other more soothing graphics and images when you're communicating about your college's response. Personas are another way to help define your audience so that you can resonate with them better. You are storytellers, so keep this in mind. This is in your wheelhouse. Creating personas is really about creating a semi-fictional, generalized representation of your key audiences, their backgrounds, their goals, and their challenges. And the best personas are developed with research, the kind of fundamental research we talked about earlier, community and student surveys, so that you first find out what's driving your audience, what their needs are, what they prefer, how they behave. Did I mention media preps? Use that research to identify patterns and commonalities, consider demographics, employment status, where they live, how they're consuming media, and then you can create content that attracts them and that they can relate to. The images shown here show how we used data from that research to create personas for Oakland Community College. This infographic shows how we used market data and media press data to create a persona specifically for online students at Orange County College. Developing personas lets you go beyond the demographics so that you're considering behavior and psychographics. And this is important because it gives you an opportunity to target and personalize your marketing to different segments with digital media. You can form stronger emotional connections with your audience segments that are focused on their motivations and interests. And we see better results when we target this way. But in the new normal, which feels like anything but normal to all of us, we have some new considerations to throw in that mix when we're developing personas. What kind of access do they have to technology? Can we provide laptops, Wi-Fi support? How comfortable or uncomfortable are they online? What can we do to make them feel more comfortable? What's going on at home? Likely it's a lot more chaos and tension. And what can we do to help them find the time and space they need so they can be successful in that kind of home situation now? How is this new normal impacting their anxiety level? What supports do we offer at the college, and can we provide them in a remote manner during this time? And now more than ever, you need an honest assessment of your student online experience and how mobile friendly you really are. Pam referenced that earlier. This may be the opportunity you've been waiting for to make the kind of improvements you've been advocating for that you know need to happen and will certainly be needed long after this subsides. Students, even when they return to campus, will continue to have heightened expectations when it comes to a satisfying online experience with you. And final consideration is looking at where are they in the student journey so that you really have a keen understanding of your audience and how to motivate them. As the saying goes, timing is everything. And the student journey is not quick. Remember that more than half of prospective students spend over a year researching their college decision. You can't get in front of them a month before classes start and expect them to enroll. You really need to be there for them every step of the way. And that journey is complex and probably a lot more erratic right now. So you need to be understanding how they're engaging in different ways on different platforms as they move along in that decision-making process. If you're interested in more detailed insights into this student journey and the data that Google has gathered about student behaviors, I encourage you to join us for a special webinar we're hosting next Thursday, April 16th, with our partners from Google and Reach Local. We'll be sharing Google's digital insights since we had to postpone our Google New York event this spring. We're still planning to host the event at Google sometime in the upcoming year, but this webinar will give you some additional data now to help you maximize your impact in the digital space. Finally, I'd like to share with you some thoughts on what you may already know that can help you drive your actions today. Think about your new students. You already know that the ones who receive campus tours and orientations to services are more likely to stick around and be successful. So what are you doing to support and promote online orientations and virtual tours? With your continuing students, you already know that those who are engaged and involved on campus are the ones who are more successful and persistent. So what are you doing to support and promote community engagement online and through social media? With your online students, you know that from prior experience that online students are often the ones who feel more disconnected, have additional stresses. And now that you've shifted everyone online, including those who didn't want to go online, how are you connecting them to proactive advising and support services? Now more than ever, you need to be the leaders on your campuses. You need to work with colleagues across the college to be sure you're doing all that you can to offer and promote things like online advising and video tutorials. And finally, you have some unique audiences, and they also have opportunities for you. You have opportunities with students who are primed for online because they've been home taking their university classes online. You can look at this as a chance to go after these guests or visiting four-year students for your summer classes. Share with them the opportunity to take classes online with you for less, to get caught up in their credits, to get ahead and transfer those credits back. If things continue this way, they may find it preferable to continue taking those online classes with you in the fall before heading back to their four-year school. And with all of those folks who are now finding themselves out of work and looking for skills and job training so that they can gain some income stability, how are you reaching out to them, tailoring not only your message strategy, but your program development so that they can feed into recession-proof industries? How are you helping them take advantage of those short-term training options? And how are you helping them take advantage of financial aid and scholarships like your Promise programs? And don't forget about non-credit personal enrichment students. That audience is growing now. When you think about all of the people of all ages stuck at home, bored, wanting to learn something new. This is the moment to bring your art, your photography, your language, your cooking, and your exercise classes to them. And remember, as we at Interact like to remind folks, our students at the community colleges are among the bravest people any of us ever meet. They are brave, but they need you. They need you more than ever right now, so be their hero. And with that, I'll turn it back to Pam.
So part two, your plan. And those of you who've known me for a while, I am captivated by flowcharts. Yes, there's my pipeline, which is basically the pipeline from start to finish. And here's what one of my typical plans look like with all the media by audience, by month, by type of messaging. But that isn't what we're going to do today. Instead, what I'm going to give you is my bigger picture plan, the one that I use when I want to talk about the main flow of the entire campaign. So let's look at the ideas of things we want to talk about. Recruitment. First of all, marketing's changed. How do you recruit students when everybody's uncertain? Retention. How do you get students to persist, not only within the semester, but between the semesters, which is where you lose anywhere from 30 to 50% of them. Onboarding, you know that you are losing people during your conversion pipeline for the most part because that you are not in charge of the messaging. The messaging comes from all sorts of folks around the campus, and for the most part, they're simply giving people facts, not trying to convert them. And recovery, how do you bring back people that you've lost when they're dealing with other issues? I mean, for example, when you think about it, you've got lots of people who did not come back from spring because they didn't want to go online. You've probably lost a significant number of students, because if you hadn't lost them, your presidents wouldn't have been so worried about fall enrollment. So you need a lightning plan, which I look at as both fast and hard-hitting, is the reason why I call it my lightning plan. Here are your priorities, Mr. Phelps. Number one, anybody get that? It was okay, just had to do it. Number one priority is retention, the people you have. Some of you took a break and came back up, and you're actually coming back to school either this week or last week as you got faculty using online teaching. Retention is your main piece, because if you can keep more of the folks that you have right now, it makes recruiting for the fall a lot easier. Number two, recovery. The people you lost, they loved you once, they can love you again. You have their addresses, you know where they live, you have their cell phone. It's very easy to go out and reach these people, and it's much cheaper to reach them and find ways to pull them back in than it is to go out and market to the entire universe. Number three, convert those you've been ignoring and focus on database marketing. And when I say convert, I'm saying you many times have recruiting folks that you send out, and you have lists, and you send them one or two things, but basically you leave it to them to make the conversion for the next step. Instead, what I want you to do is to really gather every name of everybody from around campus. You've probably got, people in nursing who are sitting on lists of people that did not have the qualifications to come into the nursing program. Those people could be coming into other programs right now. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of people right now who are not thrilled with a life in retail. So knowing that, this is a time to be talking about other kinds of jobs. So database marketing. Number four, milk your conversion pipeline. And what I mean is that moment from the time they apply to the time they register and day one of classes, that is your conversion pipeline. And most of the time, you just let people leak through it like it doesn't really matter. There'll be more later. Well, the truth is that right now, if you converted everybody that's going to be in your pipeline, you would not have an enrollment problem. So this is a place where you can spend more money on getting people to convert. And finally, number five is target the new audiences in your mix. And by that, well, let me talk about that a little bit more later. So with that, this is kind of how I typically do what I call communication plans, right? That are a little more detailed than the broad year-long kind of piece. So normally I have these are the stages of the customer journey, right? Awareness and consideration and application, and then they engage and persist at day one, and then we retain them. And then I use databases, and I look at the trigger, like awareness is when they come out of the woodwork and they appear in one of my databases because they've done something. They've talked to a recruiter, they finished a GED, they signed up for dual enrollment. Those are my trigger points that move them from one to the next. And then my typical media that I use to follow them along from print all the way through, okay? That's what it normally looks like. Instead, this is what it should look like to you right now, okay? Number one, if you look at the customer journey stages, your job right now, today, is to retain the students that you have. I don't know how much you've lost in enrollment. I'd be really interested if you'd share that. But the fact of the matter is the more of these folks that you can keep engaged, get them to stay to the end of the semester, because remember, there's no guarantee they're going to stay even though you've come back up online, right? Retain them to the end of the semester, and before they disappear, get them to register while they're still taking classes, which may involve moving heaven and earth, but you want to look at retention first. Number two, you want to focus on engaging and getting them to persist and take summer classes. For the first time in your life, most of your students do not have summer jobs they're going to go off to. They're not going to go off and work at some kind of retail or whatever they normally would do. They are free to take summer classes. Your summer enrollment should be the biggest summer enrollment you have ever had in your life, and that's what I want you to be focusing on, which means Are you set up to offer more classes than normal, right? Is it expandable? Do you have more offerings than simply your typical, I need to make up a class kind of thing? And then go back, please, to consideration, right? When you're thinking about consideration, what I want you to be thinking about is these are the people that somehow or another have ended up in a database, and these are the people you develop your entire marketing focus on because they've already done something. They gave you their ACT, they're in non-credit, they are GED, they sent you an inquiry, they graduated with a certificate but might come back for a degree now. They're a high school graduate. Those are the people where you have their names, you know where they live, you can go after them easily, and then finally you work your application list and negotiate your involvement now. And you can see how the triggers are a little bit differently. I'm not going to walk through all of it right now, but if you're interested, let me know. Happy to do a whole thing on this alone. Next one. Now, awareness is normally where most of you guys spend all your time doing marketing, right? That's when we go, oh, it's spring, let's put out TV and digital and all those ads. Okay, I'm not saying to ignore it. I do want you to do it. But here's some things to think about. First of all, out of district marketing. Minimize it. You know why? Because none of them are going to move into your town and move into your dorms. And people will go, well, yeah, but they're online. You can take classes from us even if you live in Botswana. That's true, but then you're going to be in competition with Harvard and Stanford and all of the other places that have been doing online for a lot of years. You can go up in there. I'm not saying ignore the broader world, but I'm saying own your local first. So out of district marketing, minimize it. Paid traditional media, minimize it. You don't need billboards this year, Grasshopper. Why? Because very few people are out driving around. You know, if you want to do something useful, I don't know, plan for November or something. Normal geofencing, they're not hanging out in the malls, they're not hanging out at the high schools. So you're going to have to do a much larger area. So you need to be thinking about what you want to do. If you've never done geodemographic mapping to figure out where your students are from and where the ones you just lost are from, let me know. I'd be happy to explain how you can use it using tools or laying around the office and Google. Maximize. Here's the stuff I want you to maximize. First of all, if you look at those databases, remember you can now go after the general community using social media, PR as well. You can go after retired folks because many retired folks that before could go out and live an active life are stuck at home. They're probably ready for classes, continuing ed, and layoff lists. I can't tell you and stress enough, going after people who've been laid off. These are people where when they come back, they can actually be much better after having gone through this than they were when they were laid off or furloughed off of whatever job, but you need to think about them. So here's the maximize list. YouTube with helpful study and community information. Take control of or at least manage all the conversion messages, meaning, for God's sakes, don't let financial aid write those death threat messages. You failed to pay your this, you haven't done that. You want to make sure everything is as stress-free, as kind, as welcoming, as we are here for you. This is why we exist, as you can. And if you've never looked at all of the conversion messaging that gets sent to students from the moment they apply to day one of classes, well, you probably don't have time now, but you already know who the offenders are. And most of them are usually business office, financial aid, sometimes, believe it or not, advisors and counselors, because they're in a hurry and they've got to get through a lot of students. Take control of your conversion messaging and make it a kinder and gentler kind of message. Finally, go after lists in your community. I'm talking senior center, PTA, Chamber of Commerce, economic development, the layoff lists. Those should exist. And remember, if you can work your lists, it means you don't have to waste money trying to hit everybody in the universe. You could leave hitting everybody in the universe to paid and free media and PR and social media, right? You can do that. But if you can get the lists, what that means is all of your messaging can truly be focused on their particular place in life. And as Mary said, look at their student journey, right? Many of them are in a place where they're thinking, you know, I never realized that working in retail meant that everything could close like this. Well, now they realize it and they're looking for something else. You have that, and that's something to take advantage of. Mission critical, these are things to think about. Recruiting right now is useless. And I don't mean recruiting the act, I mean recruiting the office. They have no high schools to go stand at. They have no meetings that they're going to go sit there with their little display against the wall and say, come visit me, come. They don't have any of that, which means they need to be redeployed for person-to-person outreach on the phone or digitally. And if they're not in your purview, if they're in student services, negotiate that now. Because marketing, gang, you've always had mass media and tactical media and social media. For the first time, you may have access to the foot troops, the people who can actually make phone calls and send emails, personal ones, right? So you need to negotiate that right now because they can be part of your retention campaign right now. If you have no power in retention, like nobody asked you to play, you may sit on the retention committee, but you're not being invited to do lots of things. Speak loudly, reminding leadership that this time it's going to be very difficult to replace students who are lost or that the college threw away. Meaning most of you, and this you've heard me say it before, most of you colleges will lose 30% of your current students between the fall semester and the spring semester. They evaporate, they disappear. Why? Well, that's a conversation for another day. And between spring semester and fall, you lose 50%, right? If you could keep even half of them, you will not have a problem this fall. But that means you really need to be having a say in the retention message. Work your databases. They are cheap, they are personal, they are powerful, and you can do a lot more with inviting people into the school when you actually have an idea what they care about. Work your free and your paid social media. At this point, I won't kid you. Yeah, it's good to have social media, thank goodness, right? Because people are spending a lot of time online, etc. Free because you want to be taking advantage of whatever news media you have in your community. Those are good things to work, but I would not hang my hat on it. You have lists, work those lists. And then plan this now as a whole, right? The reason why I gave you that flow chart and didn't just say, here's 3 simple ways to improve your marketing and recruitment for summer or fall, is because you need to look at this as an entire organism that you need to organize now, because retention now will flow into summer, will flow into fall, right? And what if you screw up now, you have fewer people to work with for summer, and if you screw up summer, you have fewer people to work with for fall. So this is the moment where you look at that entire pipeline and you make it work for you, because it's going to be more effective and less expensive, which who does not want that? So other pieces to think about are the audiences. Mary talked about this. I'm not going to beat a horse here, dead or otherwise. In Michigan, they call them guest students, right? These are students returning from the university into the local community who want to take a class, make up a grade, whatever it is. You have them. You realize that many of them, if they're only in their first year, you could capture them to do their second year with you. Yes, you could. So I want you to think about how you're going to reach out to them and how you're going to go after them. And first step would be look back at all of your lists of high school graduates over the last 2 to 3 years and bring those back into play. Stop outs, you've got a lot of them, more now than probably ever before because of the shutdown and the move to online or whatever you're doing right now. Go after them. There's no reason you can't get them back. They're probably not busy, just saying. Laid off, retail sucks. Yeah, it just does. People who've been living a good life, been working in the food industry, in retail, many of them are holding on by a thread. This is your opportunity to come to them with a really powerful message about how, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to go back to that job that just laid you off? Here are other jobs that are in demand. Perhaps nursing is not the most popular one right now, but certainly there's health field jobs and training that are available. Training, continuing ed, fully online programs, and do not forget short paid classes, non-credit. there are going to be a lot of people who would be looking for the kinds of classes, how to maneuver this within your community, right? Here is a class on how to manage living in the pandemic in your local community. Here are the places that offer delivery. Here are the places that do X. Here's how to make food with whatever you've got in your cupboard. There's a million of those articles appearing now, but a lot of people need it to come off the page and be face to face. You can take advantage of that right now. So I hand it off now to Cheryl. Cheryl?
Great, thanks so much. Pam had warned everybody in the beginning of our conversation that she had a loud husband and a loud dog. I also have 2 loud children. So those of you who are at home with your children right now, you know what I'm talking about. I think I'm on the 14th time watching Frozen 2. And my 12-year-old is screaming at his Xbox right now because he's playing a Fortnite tournament. So if you hear screaming or loud singing, now you know what's in the background of my house. I went out to my mailbox yesterday and I actually got a postcard from a local college, not one in my service area. It was addressed to the person who lived in my house before me. So it's not my local community college. And it really struck me because here in California, we are now 4 weeks into mass closures, and all community colleges have moved online in the last couple of weeks. And most have been closed, since the beginning of March. But the postcard was this beautiful picture of a group of students that were inside a laboratory. And the call to action was that you could get a hands-on career education. So I know that this college has had time to think about their messaging and could have easily, put a stop to this postcard, because it definitely sent a message that wasn't reflective of the type of education people are getting right now. Nothing is hands-on. Everything is sitting in front of your computer screen. And you definitely don't want to be showing, groups of students right now in your messaging as well. So it's really important not just to think about how you plan to communicate, the tactics and the audiences that you want to reach, but you also have to really think about your message. You have to think about your creative approach, the type of photography you're using, the language you're using, and really focusing on storytelling. Remember, we're not in sales mode right now. We should be in story mode. And so I'm going to give you some examples of some colleges. Some of these are our clients. Some are things that I've pulled as I've talked to people across the nation to show you type of messaging that's really resonating well. So there's some various audiences to look at. Really, I firmly believe, and I'm going to echo what Pam had just said, your #1 job as a marketer right now should be to keep your current students enrolled. You're not going to have a sudden influx of money that's going to allow you to put the type of dollars into advertising that's going to get a bunch of new students in your door. If you're losing 50% of your students right now because of COVID-19 and because of just the natural attrition between spring and summer, you're going to be a really tough spot come fall. So focus on your current students. You should be serving people now and winning business later. Focus on serving the students and keeping people healthy and engaged. So of course, a lot of you have been showing your leadership and your messaging. That's really important, is to continue to show your college president, your faculty and staff, praise your everyday heroes, show what people are doing to keep your community safe and engaged, have regular internal communication that reminds students why they're there. There is so much going on in a student's life right now. I mean, imagine your life and then put online classes on top of it. You got to remind them why they're there. This is a little 30-second spot that Los Angeles Community College District did just to announce that its online classes were reopening this past last Monday. And I'm going to have Angela play it. I'm not going to put the sound on. Something really easy. Important work has been interrupted. But this Monday, March 30th, due to the hard work of staff, faculty, and trustees and the generosity of our community, college classes will restart online. Your dreams and needs are not on hold. The path to get them there is simply going to be different. But if our community colleges have taught me anything, they have taught me that we are resilient, we are strong, and we are all in this together. Simple messages matter. This is something that we helped the Los Angeles Community College produce, just with a quote from the president and a couple of pictures. We put it up online, and within 15 minutes, it had 400 views. The college president and the board president went together and had a joint 2-minute address that we edited for them the day that classes opened, and it got emailed to all students, and it got thousands and thousands of views and shares. So I think what you're going to see right now is these type of authentic messages build internal pride, but they also have a reach and an effect that you're not going to get through a lot of paid media. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be using paid media, but you need to be telling your students why they should stay there. I'm going to give a shout out right now to Daniel from South Texas. I actually was playing my puzzle. I have become quite a puzzler in the last couple of weeks, and he's in McAllen, Texas, which is in the southern border of Texas and Mexico. And I actually played a puzzle piece of McAllen, Texas. I was very excited. So I took a picture and showed it to him. This is something that I saw on their website. And Angela, you can just play it in the background. They have a great brand, Experience Exceptional, and they just had faculty give these great comments to students, encouraging them to continue. It's just a 2-minute video. I put the link there so you can see it. It actually came across on my Instagram, and I thought it was so well done. But it reminded me that really right now is the time for community. You should be showing your faculty, you should be using your faculty. Also be giving your faculty tools, things like this that they can send out to their students, letters that you've written that encourage their students to stay enrolled or reminding them to re-enroll. I know we've all dreamed of having faculty on our marketing team because they are the most powerful connection to students. Now's the time to tell faculty, you have to be involved. If you want us to continue to serve students, you have to become one of my marketing professionals and give them the tools to do it. So remember, it's not the time to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. Just show the community, show the pride, show your faculty, and get them involved. So let's move on to your external messages. I have some really great examples from some for-profits and then also for some community colleges. Right now is the perfect time for you to build brand awareness. When this hit, we do media buying. We do really sophisticated digital media buying for clients all over the United States. And we had a lot of clients call and be like, oh my God, we need to shut our campaigns off. And what we told them is now is not the time to shut off. You definitely need to change your messaging, but now is the perfect time to build brand awareness because this is not going to last forever. And Mary showed a slide in the beginning of the presentation that showed the student journey. And the student journey is long. So you have some people now thinking about coming back to school next fall, and you need to be there when they're searching for you and thinking of you. So if you haven't done so already, switch some of your tactics to just building straight brand awareness. Start paying for your digital ads by impressions rather than click. You just want to get some messages out there on what a quality institution you are and what you have to offer in the community. That being said, you don't want to ignore the real world. So Angela, you can go back. You don't want to ignore the real world. So these are 3 ads from 3 big companies that frankly talk about the pandemic in their ads. How to self-quarantine, stay home, get coffee. You see one from Tom's, working from home with slippers. And then you have one from Nike that's a really simple just message. It's just a paid message from Nike. And you can tell that they've actually paid for this by the little blue dot next to their name. So it looks like just an easy message that's going out, but it's saying that the health of their athletes around the world is a top priority and what they're doing to monitor the situation. Authentic and also recognizing that we're in the middle of a pandemic and the way we communicate is a little bit different. So when you're thinking about your messaging, be aware of where your students are psychologically. I think the idea of short-term certification is wonderful because we know this is going to come to an end. Part of our social anxiety is not knowing when exactly that's going to happen. So people might not, new students might not be thinking, oh, now's the time to go back for a degree, right? During the recession's going to last for a couple of years. People are like, I'm going to go back and get a degree because I know this recession sucks and we're not going to be out of it for a while. This pandemic could be over by this summer. We don't know. So people are in that mindset. What can they do now to get ahead? How can they position themselves in the short term so that when they are back out working, they have better, stronger skills? So think of where they are psychologically and talk about things that will impact them in the short term. Also, in your advertising, people are looking for short-term diversions. I mean, how do you guys have that thing on your phone that shows you how much time you're spending on your devices? I'm up like 37% this last week. So, don't be afraid to put out boosted posts that have messages from your faculty or staff, or do some source crowding content where people are just using hashtags. I'm going to show one college who's doing that really well up next. Fun little quick things that people can do, old videos that you have repurposed to show the type of tools and learning experiences students have in your class. So use this time people are online, especially on social media, to really, showcase yourself. But you really need to reassess and check your tone. And at the end of the day, right now, your marketing really needs to be simple, and it needs to show people you're open, you care about them, you're there, their goals, their dreams are not on hold, and that you are the college of the future. So really quickly, before I show some great examples of COVID-19 specific community college messaging, I just want to throw you out an idea that we use here at Interact a lot. We work with our clients a lot to come up with algorithms that take away the guesswork. So this is a campaign that was a brand that we created that was based on a lot of research, so about 6 months of research. This is for a consortium in California that has 12 colleges. So we needed to find a brand that would unite all of them. And these campaigns are specifically around career education. So our brand is ready. So you'll be ready for anything, ready for the future, ready to work, ready for a great career. Our faculty are ready to teach you. Are you ready to graduate? So we try to find words and phrases that can easily fit into algorithms so that you don't have to keep guessing what your message should be every time you go out for a new campaign. So having a strong brand and a good messaging algorithm makes you more powerful in your messaging and takes away the guesswork. So just a quick way to set it up. You can set up some intrigue in your tagline, your headline. You're going to have a brand punchline with a modifier. We're ready. You'll be ready. Your call to action. These are digital ads, so we want people to click. And then at the bottom, your logo and word mark. Pretty easy, pretty simple formula. And I hope you download the slide and think about how your messaging could fit into this. In a perfect world, you do brand research and come up with something that's going to last, for 10, 20 years. But if you don't have the time or resources in the next couple of years to do that, think about the messaging that you do have and how it could be fit into this algorithm. So algorithms make your life easier, but apart from that, they really work. We saw this with Oakland Community College in Detroit. They have an algorithm, Excellence Empowered. So you can see here, empowered expertise, the passion to lend a hand, the skills to save a life. And we employed this algorithm, and within a semester, we saw nearly a 14% increase in applications, higher enrollment, and a big increase in donations because the foundation started to use this same messaging as well. So a great way to unify different departments. Now, Oakland applied this to their messaging today. So in the next slide, you can see how they took their algorithm, how they took the way they talk about themselves, and they used it to communicate with their students and their community about what's happening during COVID-19. So school's not out for summer at OCC. Despite the challenging times, we are here, and you should be too. All of our services are available online, and we are ready to help you. Register now. Oakland Community College, Excellence Empowered. I like this picture, kind of a fun play on words. This summer, work on your core classes. No matter where you go to college, you can stay on track, catch up, or get ahead this summer with convenient online classes from the #1 transfer institution in Michigan. We know there are many uncertainties in the world right now, but one thing is certain. Oakland Community College is here for you. By the way, email is performing exceptionally well right now. If you're not doing email campaigns, it is something you have got to work in to your strategy. Everybody is reading email, so we're seeing phenomenal results with email campaigns. In the state of California, the California Community College Chancellor's Office has done an absolutely amazing job putting together a toolkit. And this toolkit they've made available to all 115 colleges across the state. So those are the things that you see on the left. Instagram posts, stay safe, stay in school, and build a better future. Colleges about learning even now. Many resources are being made available online to help our students. We're here to help you meet your education goals. You can see this is all persistence and retention. If you aren't paying to book retention and persistent ads, then you need to start doing that. So you have lists of current students. You can geofence their home addresses. You can link up their personal email addresses to their social media accounts and serve them ads that way. You can retarget them from your college website. These are the type of messages they need to be seen. Now, if you're uncertain of what type of photography you could use, this is a really great way to continue to do marketing that's powerful and impactful, that just uses good, strong font and colors, taking away some of the guesswork. And on the right is a message that we help Francisco Rodriguez, who's the Chancellor of Los Angeles Community College District, communicating with his students constantly, and some links in there to watch that longer video that had so many views and shares. Now, I have one more shout out on my next slide. If Chris is still listening from Allen Hancock College. Allen Hancock College is in Central California, and they made a tagline about a week ago, hashtag you got this AHC. And they are asking people to post short clips. So there's their superintendent president right now. He is just 14 seconds telling students, I'm here for you. And everybody is tagging using this hashtag on social media to create their own content. And they are throwing this up and sharing this and boosting this and involving their students. And then we're helping them launch a campaign early next week that's going to use this hashtag to continue to get people involved in talking about Allen Hancock College. So you can see some of our messaging this summer: stay on track by going online, and 100% online, 100% in demand. So not ignoring what's happening in the real world right now, but showing how they're still serving students. So a couple last slides and we're going to open this for questions. Just to conclude my section, what type of messages resonate now? We're finding in our messages that we're creating and booking for our clients, they've got to be authentic, they have to be relevant, supportive, and helpful. I asked our graphics team to find me a picture of somebody supportive and helpful. I think this is like more somebody crying. It's probably how I feel at the end of the day when I'm trying to homeschool my kids. But basically, ignore the picture and instead, how can you be authentic? How can you be supportive as a college? I was online at midnight last night. This is my old college. Shout out to Maricosta if anybody's out there. I just thought this was a great thing. People miss you. People miss being on campus. How do you continue to build a sense of community? This is not paid. This is not marketing. But if this was available to your faculty, backdrops of your campus, fun graphics that they could use during your Zoom calls to build community, to make people feel that they're back, what a great way to continue to show that you're there for people. So I thought this was great. I screenshotted it from my Instagram and wanted to share it with the rest of you. So in conclusion, these are kind of the main things we recommend to move the needle. You've got so much going on right now. I have talked to PIOs and marketing directors who literally slept on their office floor and didn't shower for days at a time because of the crisis. It's a crisis, more than a pandemic. But there are some simple things. We gave you a lot of ideas, some good takeaways that I think if you start integrating and doing now, you'll be in a better position come fall when you're looking at those enrollment numbers. So do your research, know your audience, understand how their needs have changed. Take care of your mission critical stuff first, and then work on your plans so you're not forgetting your long-term goals. And then finally, build connection and invest in some creative messaging, because that really matters. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Deb, and we're going to take some questions. Thank you all so much for listening.
All right, very good, very good. So thank you to Pam, Mary, and Cheryl. Great information so far, and we do have questions coming in, so we'll try to get through the list. Hopefully I won't miss any, but if so, we will have some follow-up opportunities as well. And as you can see from this last slide, that is how you can contact Pam, Cheryl, and Mary directly if you have follow-up questions and if we, for any reason, miss one of your questions that are coming in now. So let's start with one that came in a while ago, and it was talking about online tours. So with online tours for community colleges, what does that look like since we're now all online? And
Cheryl,
that's not directed to a person, so I don't know which one of you would like to take that question.
Well, I know, so I can start on that. So it depends on how you have your online tour set up, right? So a lot of people have really beautiful virtual tours. I wouldn't take it off your site, and you guys are going to reopen. But you might, want to put something on the login page that says, this community college is currently operating, due to COVID-19, our community college is currently operating 100% online. However, we will be reopening, and we invite you to take a look at what our beautiful campus has to offer. So I think with some framing, it's still completely appropriate to have that on your website. Yeah, Pam, Mary, you want to add anything?
Actually, I'll step in because one of the things that many of you have done, your orientations are in person. And now if you don't have a recorded orientation, you're going, oh my God, we have nothing. And if you're all online and you can't do an orientation online, how does that look? Hey gang, don't sweat it. PowerPoint works. I mean, there's a million tools out there. Nobody's going to expect it to look picture perfect. And in fact, it can be simply authentic, right? Have your own students ask them to record pieces and put them together with over slides. This is not the time for crazy perfection. It's the time for authenticity.
I think that's a really good point that you've made, is don't be perfect. Now's not the time. So I'd like to repeat that because I certainly think that's an important takeaway. Next up question, we do have several questions that came in on this particular topic, and this one of them did direct them to Pam. So maybe it's naive, but several people have asked, how do you get a hold of layoff lists?
Well, two pieces. One is there should be a layoff list from your Chamber of Commerce because they know who has shut things down. Also, your department, the employment department, will have lists of at least the companies that have been laying people off or people who've recently applied. If you have a list of businesses, you can go through and say, we'd like to reach out and offer educational opportunities, and lots of the businesses will make that available. The other thing also is to basically reach out to business directly right now and tell them, listen, we know you don't want to lay off or furlough your workers, but we're here to help. If you will share our information, give us their information, we will reach out and make opportunities available to them while they're at home. So, there's a couple of different ways to go after it.
Also, in terms of media buying, you can do behavioral media purchases through digital advertising. So if people are searching in your area for terms like unemployment benefits or I was laid off, think of the search terms that people who recently have been laid off are looking for. And then you can serve your digital display ads based on those search terms and on the online behavior of people. So that is one way where it's not a list like what Pam was talking about, but it is a way to target people who may have recently lost their job. So I know search terms that we like to bid on here at Interact are looking for a new job, building a better career, anything that's career or job related, or any articles that people have read around unemployment in your service area are one way that you could target them.
Next question. This is a question that I've heard before. when things were more routinely handled, but here it comes up again. How do we handle different departments running with their own retention and recruitment efforts with the best intentions, of course, but without consulting with us or SEP or considering an overall plan?
Well, from my perspective, what you do is reach out and say to all the departments, what are you doing now to improve retention when you no longer have them in your class and you don't have the same kind of personal relationship that you normally have. Make them write down what they think they're doing now. For the most part, if they're really doing something, I wouldn't get in the way of them. When faculty tell me that they're the most important people in students' lives, I believe them. So if they really are active, let them be active, but then offer them support and what can you give to them to make it easier to do that. But I'm telling you, most of them are barely holding on by their fingernails and not doing anything formal other than telling their faculty to be nice and remind people to register for classes for fall. So, what if you come up with a plan and say, here are the things that I can offer you, and have faculty use them, let faculty be the delivery mechanism for a lot of this, and work with your student services so that people can register now, not wait until later. That's what you want to be doing.
And I would also say that you need to wrap your arms around all of those communications that are going out to students from the key departments that Pam talked about earlier, whether it's financial aid, the business office. Now's the time to really, zero in on those key areas that communicate with your students so that you can refine those and make sure that they make sense in terms of who's sending what, when they're sending it, so that there's an actual plan behind how students are getting their information and that they're getting what they need when they need it and in just the right amount, just bite-sized information, not overloading them or overstressing them. And I think that involves really getting support from the top. You need to be at the table with the president. You need to be working with your vice presidents and deans. Everyone's remote right now, but you need to be meeting with people and talking about planning and being proactive in terms of developing those plans and letting them know and understand why you need to be driving those messages and leading the way with the communication strategy. It shouldn't be a potluck approach with everybody handling things on their own and now remotely too. That'll be a disaster.
Next question up. Knowing that many people don't answer unknown numbers, is there a suggested script to leave a voicemail?
It depends on your community. I mean, you can be folksy if you're in a community that has it. Don't be folksy, be business-like in your community that responds more to that. The bottom line is that immediately identify yourself as from the local community college, calling for whatever reason you've got calling. I mean, one of the pieces for the first time when we do research, doing phone research, we know that for the most part, people are on their phone and answering. And if it's one of those things from New York, etc., people may be slower to respond. But so many people are reaching out right now. I bet you're going to find that the answer rates will go up. And the message ought to be short and sweet and simple and all about what you're offering them, and some simple ways to reach out without having to give away personal information. Those are the danger signs for anybody, is when you ask, give me your email, your phone number, whatever. At this moment, that personal information has to be earned, not asked for.
Next up question, do you have any advice on how to request control of those important conversion messages?
Yeah, well, show the slides that we were talking about and say, in times where you're not worried about every student and trying to convert them all, then it's perfectly fine to have everybody control their own message and have it go out helter-skelter. So one week they get 35 emails from different departments, and one week they get nothing. In a normal year, maybe that's okay. It really isn't, but for the most part, they've not put communications into the middle of that mix and say, but this time, we need to make sure that every single message is converted and used to the student at the right possible moment. If you've got a CRM, that's awesome. But even if you don't have a CRM, you can still work it, and you need to create the communication arc that starts warm and friendly, but is not all about transactional. We need you to do these 12 things, do these 7 things, do these 8 things by tomorrow, or we'll drop you. All of that needs to be recast in a way to keep pulling people through the pipeline. And that's going to need the skills of your office or somebody that understands those pieces. And for the first time, this is the moment. I used to have a president who used to say, never waste a good crisis. Well, you've got a good crisis, and they're going to need you to deliver on this. So this is when you step in and you say, I believe we can make a difference, but I need to be able to control the messaging that's going out to students and have it not be helter-skelter, and see what happens. And if not, get me on the phone with them, and I will happily say the same thing.
And I'm going to add too is I think a lot of times when we talk to colleges that the marketing director is not invited to participate in messaging like this, it's not a time to wait to be invited or to fight your case. Write the messages, design them, give them to your president and say, this is what needs to be going out. Do the work rather than asking permission to do the work. Just do it, and if at that point they still aren't giving you the authority to do it, then at least you know that you've done everything you can and that you're involved in every way you can be. I think though 9 times out of 10, if you were to come with the solution, not just the problem, I think you'd be folded in more successfully.
And if they say no to you, then use this entire campaign for your next job search.
Good point.
Very good.
Hey, if they don't respect you, don't waste your life on them.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
All right, I'm going to move forward for some more questions. Before we do, I just want to make a mention. We had intended to go about 90 minutes, but we will not be shut down after 90 minutes. So as long as there are questions coming in, now is your opportunity to ask the pros. So if you have other questions, keep them coming. We'll answer them as long as we can. So for right now, we've got another one. When it comes to using current students' home addresses and emails for direct mail and geofencing, are there FERPA or state restrictions that we need to be aware of? This question is coming out of Bunker Hill Community College in Massachusetts.
Well, Mary, I can tell you, Mary might be able to speak more on the East Coast, but here on the West Coast, that information is considered directory information, and your admissions department controls the directory information. So that is information that can be given out to a third party upon a request. And the college itself has the authority to deem whether or not that request is reasonable. Because you are serving a critical function of the college, we've never had a college not okay that request. One thing that we do here at Interact to help make it a little easier if colleges are a little skittish because of FERPA. And by the way, FERPA protects, things like your veteran status, if you have a health condition. FERPA does not encapsulate personal email addresses or even home addresses. So, but that being said, we use non-disclosure agreements as vendors. So if you are working with a vendor, that's something that you can ask for. And it's just basically a form where the vendor pledges that they will not use any of the student information for anything other than this particular campaign, and that the information will be destroyed after its use. And that always puts people at ease too. So Mary, I don't know if you want to add in specifically on the East Coast if there's anything different.
No, not to my knowledge, there's not anything different. That that information should not be an issue for you, and you certainly should be able to use your own student data information in terms of their mailing addresses and email to reach out to them and to develop campaigns for them.
And if you're mailing things to students, like, if you're mailing their degrees or certificates or postcards, you're giving lists of students' names and home addresses to a mailing house. So giving it for a geofence ad is the exact same thing. It's just done digitally.
Exactly.
Next question. We are a technical college depending on hands-on lab classes. So how's the best way to message to hang on with us online, even though they are not getting their training?
Well, I know California has already been dealing with this because, like most of you, there's been a major push in CTE classes and programs over the last few years. And many of them, there's a lot of ways to handle this. Many of them, what they've been focused on is dividing it into two sections. One is all the book learning and put the book learning now, and instead of looking at courses where you do the studying and then the hands-on and the studying and the hands-on. Instead, what they're doing is they're putting two sections of study with the idea in fall you'll have two sections of hands-on. So this is the time where it's important for your academic folks to get creative and realize if I've got the book learning but I don't have a hands-on, it's a lot easier to get people to come back and register for the fall classes. So think about those ways that not only allow their time not to be wasted when they can't do the hands-on, but make it more likely they'll come back for the second part.
Okay, and I'll remind everybody and posting questions again, it might help if you want to direct your question directly to either Pam, Mary, or Cheryl. They're doing a great job of jumping in as it is. But if you do have one that's directed at specifically for one of them to answer, just go ahead and indicate that in your question, please. We do have a few more yet coming on, so we'll continue to plow through some of these questions. Next one up is talking about Zoom meetings, because with the everybody working remotely, there's a lot of Zoom meetings going on, but this individual is asking, do you recommend anything other than Zoom, since there are so many security issues with Zoom and Zoom bombing hackers interrupting meetings?
Oh, there's a lot of options. We're on GoToMeeting right now. Yeah, Interact, we use FaceTime a lot. You can do, Google Hangouts, but I think Zoom seems to be the preference for most colleges, at least that we work with.
And also Zoom is updating their software. They didn't, before it became so popular, they had lots of little holes in their system that they didn't need to plug because we hadn't found all of them. Now we're finding them, they're becoming obvious. So they've created the waiting room where people are sitting off site and then the person who's moderating can allow them in or not. So they're building in some new things that are meant to help with the security. We've got a college who's they're going to do a simulcast. They're broadcasting the graduation with the leadership and the president, etc. And then they're basically using Zoom as a kind of a way to connect with students and faculty, even though they're all far away. I salute them for trying, and the answer is always, we control the message, but we don't control the medium. And there are some things we've chosen to err on the side of reaching out to you, and then you deal with what happens.
All right, Pam, I believe this question is for you. It goes back to some of your graphs and pipelines. This question is asking if you can elaborate on what milking the conversion pipeline means. Can you elaborate?
Sure. Okay, look at it this way. If you get 100 inquiries, right, people who sign up on your website or they talk to a recruiter, you get 100 of them. Typically that results with anywhere between 50 people actually applying, right? Okay, so now you're dealing with 50. And then look at your normal pipeline, right? Your normal pipeline might be, I do an orientation, and then we do testing, and then I send them off to a counselor, and then we do, right, whatever your steps are, lay that out. Between every single step, you lose students. You lose students who applied but don't go up and do the orientation, or they do the orientation but they never make it to testing, or they do testing but they never make it to the advisor, or they see the advisor and the advisor helps them set up a schedule and they go up and register but they don't apply for financial aid and they don't pay their bill, so they get dropped. That is your onboarding pipeline, right? At any given moment, if you start with 100 inquiries and then you go to about 50 applications, by the time you get down to day one of classes, you probably only have 15 to 25 students, right? So 1/4 of the potential people that you could have had are there, and the other 75% have fallen through the cracks because you are not tracking them or paying attention to them. I call it, when any of you have heard me drone on and on, it's my theory of the wildebeest and the water holes. We don't lose students at the water holes, i.e. financial aid or orientation or even assessment. We lose them between the water holes when they're traveling from assessment to the advisor. And if we don't have messaging and things that allow them to stay steady, to not give up, then we just look like an unending list of things they must do in order to qualify to come to day one of classes. So what I'm trying to tell, I don't know if you know what your conversion rate is. Many of you do. Some of you probably don't. But if you don't, then think about it as my list. If you have 100 students, imagine what your enrollment would be if you actually could get 75 of them to day one of classes. Or if you're normally getting 50 people who register, imagine what your enrollment would look like if you could even get 30 to classes. That's milking the pipeline, not allowing them to fall out of the system and trying to make sure that you squeeze them all through.
All right, we do have a question about the Google webinar you mentioned. If you could give more detail, when will it be occurring?
I can share that. It will be next Thursday, April 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we will have information about that on the Interact website and out on our social media. And I can send you a direct link to it if anyone wants to reach out to me after this webinar so that you're all set for that one.
Okay, we have a couple of other questions then. This one is just kind of a comment back to the question about FERPA restrictions. Jody from Dabney S. Lancaster Community College, she indicates that the restrictions in Virginia are very tight and they cannot share mailing or email information. We have to mail directly, and she advises, I think as you folks alluded to as well, that you need to check your state's laws. So we do have a couple of other questions. How do we
By the way,
Yes,
I'm just going to interrupt and say, remember, FERPA is a national law. It is not interpreted state by state. It's got national characteristics. So what frequently happens is one state has decided or even colleges, you get a crazy IT guy who decides it's all private information and then they don't share it. So this is the moment where if it's a college decision to have an honest conversation with your leadership about what appropriate use is, because directory information is not privileged, that's in the law itself.
All right, that's really good then. So as this individual is indicating, states' laws really shouldn't be interpreting differently from the federal, correct?
That's it.
All righty. Okay, good add-on. Thank you, Pam. So how do we market for fall classes when we're still unsure whether classes will still be online?
Well, I think you go forward assuming that they will be online, because then if they aren't, that's the standard piece. So what you do is you make sure that everybody's doing at your college is doing the kinds of things that gets ready to support students who are coming to take classes online and really don't want to. And then if it all opens up and everything is beautiful and they can come back to class, great, that's a win. But plan for the worst case scenario. Don't plan for it all to be better by Easter. That's probably not going to happen. And in the meantime, how do you market for it? The beautiful part about it is, other than The outdoor advertising, which I wouldn't spend a lot of money on right now because nobody's outdoors looking at them or riding mass transit or that stuff. All of the tools that you've had before can work. It's just the message must be different. The timing has to be different. And you need to be looking at what the motivators are. And that's basically, I hope you got something out of both Mary and Cheryl's information, because those are great examples of how you can push the marketing forward.
All right, very good. Well, I think in light of the time, and I know people are having to jump off the line, so let's go ahead and close things out for the day. Once again, I'm going to encourage you, the information for contacting Pam, Cheryl, or Mary are online right there. Their website is theinteractcom.com. Somebody asked about that. Once again, I'd like to extend on behalf of our board a huge thanks to Pam, Cheryl, and Mary for making today's presentation, and to Interact for being one of 3 sponsors, enabling us to provide you with some programming in this series of free 4 free webinars related to COVID-19. I do want to mention that if you haven't already signed up for the next 2 webinars in NCMPR's series on how community colleges can respond in the months ahead to COVID-19, do visit our website. It's ncmpr.org. Those webinars are online, and we also have a variety of other resources to help you manage this COVID-19 crisis. So with all that, we hope to see many of you online again very soon. In the meantime, please, please stay well and have a great rest of the day.